with the policing and the amount of, people say that cops only work a certain amount of the days, or that, that's not true. We work all the time because we're constantly having to be retrained on crisis intervention training. We're having to be trained on autism awareness, which these are all great things that you should be trained on. But what if you haven't had that training yet? And you don't have those bullet points to identify that problem? Are you still held responsible? Are you still held accountable for missing those? I like to say that when we watch a quarterback and you're big sports guys, I'm not, but you watch a quarterback during a game and he throws an interception, right? And then you have the other quarterback who's retired and he's on ESPN and he's saying, well, what he's doing is he's checking that linebacker. And his first check is if that linebacker shifts left, then he's going to go to his second read, which is going to be this guy coming across the middle. And then if the safety drops back, he's going to go to his third read and he's going to launch a bomb. But if he misses one of those checks, he throws an interception, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's why they brought on these retired guys to kind of explain to people that these quarterbacks aren't just throwing the ball away because they feel like throwing an interception. Yeah. But I feel like police officers, it's the same thing. So if you miss a certain check, now you're held responsible and accountable for everything else going to shit and throwing that interception.
Yeah, but what about there's a good analogy here. The Chauvin trial, there were professional police consultants outside of the local police force that said that the tactics used, there was one guy specifically that said that the tactics used against Chauvin were within policy. Is that true?
Yeah, they ended up actually being everything that he did. Even the chief had to admit that he could have actually used more force, and he didn't. And that was kind of like an interesting bombshell that came out during the trial. From what the media would tell you, is that everything he did was within Minneapolis Police Department policy and training, and he could have done even more.
So how did he
Dan,
end up
it's coming from where you're at, and
second-degree
I've heard you speak on this several times before about you were in the military and you've never put your knee on somebody's neck, and that's
right.
That's all fine and dandy. But as a cop, I have put my foot on somebody's forehead. So in a 3-man takedown, when somebody has ingested fentanyl, and mind you, I had a young man die in my back
Somebody
seat.
with excited delirium, for example, right?
Right. And that's what we're talking about is excited delirium. And I've had a lot of occasions, but I had a young man die in the backseat of one of the police vehicles that I was involved in. And of course, my gun and my badge were taken away for I want to say it was like 2 months. Of course, we all got cleared to the investigation. We got our stuff back and everything was great. But with the training that you have, because you don't want somebody to die in your backseat, right? These guys aren't telling you the truth. Sir, did you just swallow dope? What did you just swallow? Oh, I didn't swallow anything. I didn't swallow nothing. Well, sir, I saw you swallow something. What was it? Oh, it was a little bit of weed. And then all of a sudden they start fading out in your back seat. Then you got to pull the car over and you call 911 and then, they're dead. And then, of course they have the riots, which is what happened in my case. There was the riots up and down the street. Mm-hmm. This officer didn't do enough or these officers didn't do enough. And then they play out the tape and see that, what else can you do, right? Just because you see somebody swallow something, are we going to take them to the hospital and not take them to jail every time?
Right.
Because then you have the problem with the suspect just saying it every time. Oh, swallow dope. Don't take me to the hospital. Don't take me to jail. And you can't hold me in custody for more than 8 hours without seeing a magistrate or whatever the rules may be. So when you have the 3-man takedown with the whole fentanyl thing, and Mike, you can have your own opinion on this. That's great. I'm just going from what my opinion is that, you were trained. The first man is going to come by and he's going to grab the ankles of the gentleman. The other 2 officers are going to grab one arm and they're going to lower the guy to the ground. It's a 3-man takedown. I'm sure you've learned it in the military. We've all learned it in law enforcement. And that's what it is on paper, right?
Right.
Does that make sense to you?
Yeah. But once you get there.
So you have this and you lower him down. Right, and it never works out that way. It's usually ends up having a spear tackle and a little bit of wrestling. But the man who's got the feet, he's going to look back and away. And why is he going to look back and away? Because if he looks forward, he's going to start taking the heel of the man's feet to your chin. You're going to lose teeth. So you turn your head away to kind of deflect those kicks from the feet. And then the 2 guys are going to move the arms around the back and they're going to handcuff them. And then the other officer is going to detain the hips. And the other officer is going to move to the head and detain the head. And now you've got a guy that's laid out straight, and therefore he can't, it's going to slow down the effects of this overdose, of this excited delirium. And that's what you're trained to do. And then you're going to wait for the response of an ambulance. The average response in my city, Raleigh, is 6 to 8 minutes. How long was Chauvin on the ground?
Yeah,
seven
8
minutes?
8:30, 8:40, something like that.
Or something like
So
that.
we're in that window of 6 to 8 minutes, right? And then you're going to hold them. Now, if I were to put both my palms on the gentleman's forehead as trained, then I have no access to my radio, my pepper spray, my gun. I have no access to anything. Okay. Now, if you watch the show, if you watch the videos there for George Floyd, you see a very unruly crowd yelling, "Get off of him. He ain't done nothing wrong." Blah, blah, blah. It's a very hostile crowd, which is just something we all face in the inner cities. They're always going to be against the police. There was a cop in Jacksonville that was just jumped by a horde of folks. So it happens, right? This isn't just something made up. In the military, this would not happen because you have a squad with you, right? When you're detaining.
Well,
these
there's
POWs.
also the very real threat of lethal force without due process in a combat situation, which is not the case, hopefully, in America from a police officer, right?
Well,
that changes things
I don't
a
know,
lot.
because
Well,
you
I mean,
know,
like the average
I have
Iraqi
literally
is
physically
worried about
been
getting shot in
drug
the
off of a
face, right?
suspect by my body armor. I had a suspect on the ground, and somebody came up behind me, grabbed my body armor from behind. And
No, I'm
dragged
talking
me off of
about
him.
I'm talking about the opposite. I'm talking about the average Iraqi dude, for example, is worried I'm going to shoot him in his fucking face, whereas the average American person maybe to some degree they believe shit like that, but they don't believe if they're just writhing around on the ground they're going to get capped, because otherwise they wouldn't be doing it. You know what I mean? They're making a scene.
Right.
That's what
Absolutely.
I'm saying. So it definitely complicates the issue, the fact that they're not that lethal force isn't a real threat to them. I think not that it should
with
be.
With the Chauvin thing, I feel like what he did was what I would have done, because when those things start to happen, I move, and then I want access to all my equipment. And especially with COVID going on, Floyd was spitting on him. He was trying to bite him. These are all documented facts. And so are you going to put your hands on somebody's forehead, somebody's sweaty forehead on the ground, while they're trying to bite you and spit you and claiming that they have COVID?
Which
and
he did,
what
by
might
the
be
way.
an easier tactic is to place your knee. Now, listen, perception is terrible, and I'm not arguing that. But we, as police officers and as American citizens, we should know, and I know that every cop is taught from the beginning, perception is not reality. Meaning, if I walk into your studio and Ross has got a knife in his chest and you're standing there with blood all over you, I don't get to arrest Dan Holloway for murder because the perception is it looks like he murdered Ross Patterson. No, what I do is I get all the witnesses in there. I talk to Giorgio and Dan and Bob and all those guys, and they say, shit, dude, he tried to get the knife out of his chest. He was trying to give him CPR, and the guy that killed him's already out the door, right? Yeah. So perception isn't reality. And the perception of what Chauvin did to Floyd, the perception was terrible. But how do you know what kind of force he had on his neck? I can put my knee on your toe and you will not even know it's there. And then if you start to wiggle your toe, I can clamp down on your toe. And my posture, people won't even know that they don't know the weight shift in my body by my posture.
Yeah, but you would think the autopsy would have shown esophageal bruising and things like that, right? If it indeed was restricting the airway.
Right.
And I don't
it turns out that what the media didn't have is the actual body cam from Chauvin, where it shows him repeately moving the knee off of the neck area, like further back down.
Separate
and
times,
it wasn't 9 minutes of pressure down on like his neck. It was a constant moving back and forth and shifting during that time. So that was another thing that really, and I mean, we'll break this down in greater detail for like start to finish, probably like episode 2 or something like that. We're gonna try to go through that, but like that, even for me, just because it just looked so bad, that I feel like I made the mistake of jumping the gun, even on kind of like that feeling of, man, this is some bad shit. And I've had to walk that back as I walked through the trial. I'm like, yeah, even I was guilty of knowing what I know, saying, man, I made an opinion before really I knew all of the facts.
And that's the important thing about our show, is that we're going to go through the totality of things. And we're going to look at the time of day. We're going to look at the emotions behind things before we just make a judgment in quarterback and say, like, you suck. You threw an interception because you're a terrible quarterback. No, we're going to try to figure out, why did somebody run the wrong route? Did you miss that first check, which is your fault? Was it a coaching error? What really happened? What was the totality? And I think that, the problem is that what most cops face is that we're all out there to do a good job every single day. And when you're chasing people through the streets, which is very emotionally exhausting as far as physically exhausting. I mean, you were chasing people through backyards when there's dogs, you're going over fences. when you tackle somebody on the road, there's always going to be blood from you and from him. There's going to be exchanging of fluids. And when you're doing this day in and day out, it is exhausting.
Whoa.
A little bit of, you know what.
Don't add another layer of criminality to this.